It's interesting, and Gary alluded to this, that in spite of the terrible tension between our two countries, trade has actually increased. I mean, we export about $76 billion to China. We import. I should say we import about 76 billion. We export about 25 billion, and the exports have gone up about 8%, and the imports have gone up about 2%. But when you look at what they are, this is not the way probably most people would envisage the relationship, because they're exporting laptops and telephones to us. We're exporting iron ore, wood chips, canola, swine. Who's the first world country? What we aren't exporting, tragically, is oil and gas, which they need and which we have, but we can't deliver, and that would make an enormous difference. But we have Canadian fundamental principles in play here. We've got two of our citizens in prison in hostage diplomacy ploy, and we have incredible threats from the world's biggest bully. So we've got to be alert, but we can't turn our back on this immense market completely. So we have to do things which enhance our commercial interests, but not undermine our sovereignty. And I think everyone's aware of the need to produce things inside the country which are essential, like vaccines or protective equipment in the event of emergencies. We have to look for other countries to broaden our trade relationships. I mean, we're already trading 76% of our trade with the United States. So clearly, we need other partners. It's going to be challenging. It may impose some costs on us, but the Chinese will continue to trade with us if it's to their economic advantage. Sure. And that's obvious because it's been happening in spite of all the bullying and threats.
Thank you for that. Want to ask Sandra Pupatello. Sandra, you raised the issue of supply chains with respect to rare earth elements. Looking at even with the Biden administration, which is doing a massive review of China policy for the U.S., certainly the rhetoric so far has been continuation of the Trump rhetoric, if you want to put it that way, or the framing of the issue. So Canada may be in this position where there's supply chains that lead to the U.S. and there's supply chains that lead to China, whether it's on tech or on some of this manufacturing. How, as a former trade minister, how do we negotiate through that, do you think?
Well, I do think you have to go with where you have the most support. I mean, it was no accident that American consulate officials were with Canada as we watched them parade the Michaels into court a week or so ago. That was very telling to me, and probably a big sign and signal to China to say, hey, we've got Canada's back. And I'll tell you, we haven't seen that for many years, as you know. And likewise, why else would Trump all of a sudden want to buy Greenland? I mean, it's got nothing to do with the fact that it's close to North America, but everything to do with the fact that there are very rare specimens underground that they'd like to get their hands on. So I think their policy writ large is taking care of America, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody does that. Canada, too, has to be very wary, as Joe says. China will increase trade with us as long as it's good for China. And that we don't have the same control over our businesses. If our companies decide to do more trade with another country, we don't interfere with that. And that's really the difference in our kinds of states. So I just think we have to be very wary that we are getting ourselves into a corner on some very key items and products that have a lot to do with our supply chains that mean everything to the people who work at Ford Essex engine plant right here in my hometown. They're on layoff because of that darn chip coming out of Taiwan. And when I see military maneuvers from China, you got to say, you're in the middle of a pandemic. Is the world really watching this to this detail? What is actually happening in the South China Seas? In those maneuvers that are looking very aggressively at these other countries in their orb, and we should be worried about that.
Indeed.